Hello everyone, my name is Borax and I've been on a mission to play and rate every single champion in the support role. Today we'll be looking at Heimerdinger, who really dominated this world and is still being picked in pro play to this day. Let's quickly go over his abilities to see why he could work as a support. He has his passive, which grants Heimerdinger 20% bonus movement speed while near an ally turret or one of his turrets that he deployed. Speaking of turrets, Heimerdinger's Q lets him place them at his target location up to 3 at a time. These turrets will basic attack enemies nearby, prioritizing targets that Heimerdinger autos. The turrets spawn with 0 charge and will charge up by 1.11% each second. When reaching 100% charge, and if there is a target nearby, they will shoot out a beam of damage. Next, Heimerdinger has his W, which allows him to shoot out a wave of 5 rockets that will converge at his target location. Meaning, if you put your cursor far away from Heimerdinger, they will go in a line, but if you put your cursor close to Heimerdinger, they will converge in front of him, then spread out, meaning they are more likely to hit people, but do less damage. Also, each enemy champion hit by a rocket will grant his turrets 20% beam charge. Then Heimerdinger has his E, which gives him a grenade that he can hurl at a target location, slowing all nearby enemies by 35%, but enemies who are directly hit will be stunned for 1.5 seconds. If any champion gets hit, it will grant his turrets 100% beam charge. Finally, he has his ultimate, which lets Heimerdinger empower any of his other abilities. His empowered Q gives Heimerdinger a stronger turret he can place in addition to the other 3. His W lets him launch 4 waves of 5 rockets in quick succession, and finally his E becomes larger and will bounce 3 times in his target direction, slowing and stunning all enemies. Like I mentioned before, Heimerdinger Support drew a ton of picks and bans at this Worlds, but is he actually strong, or are teams just trolling? Well, let's find out together, as I rate Heimerdinger, the revered inventor, on his ability to be played in the support role.
Indeed, a wise choice.
In the early game, I like to rate a support's ability to invade lane and roam. When you invade, you usually want to have CC, which you could do with Heimerdinger by starting E, but unless you see an enemy super duper caught out and you know your grenade will get a kill or blow a flash, then you usually want to take Q. That being said, in multiple games that I played, I was able to do some serious damage in early scraps, baiting people into my turrets and getting some nice takedowns for my team. For invading, I will give Heimerdinger a S-. There are few champions who do more damage than Heimerdinger at level 1 thanks to his turrets, and he is the ultimate king of the anti-invade because if they ever walk into a bush where you have turrets placed, they will most likely get blown up. He doesn't deserve a S+ though, because forcing a kill can be rather tricky, and more often than not, nothing will happen as enemies will just respect you and walk away. But if they are foolish enough to even let the turrets auto them, then enjoy that extra gold from the support item, and maybe you can start the lane with an extra pot or even pink ward. Now let's talk about laning, where I like to judge a champion based on 3 categories: poking, peeling, and all inning. Poking as Heimerdinger is a lot of fun. In the earliest stages of the game, most supports are pretty weak level 1, so you can use that to your advantage to run up to them and put turrets in their face knowing they can't really get on top of you, yet to punish such aggression. Once you've established that you're an alpha, you should be able to hit level 2 first, as your turrets will inevitably hit the wave a bit, hopefully not last hitting anything. At level 2 you can grab your E if you think you need to peel, or can go for something really aggressive. Because if you do land the grenade and have your turrets nearby, they will shoot out that devastating laser that does a ton of damage. If the enemy has a lot of range on you though, you can go for your W, which will help you proc your Scorch and Comet damage that will really stack up during the lane. For poking, I will give Heimerdinger Support a S. Against melees, he is probably the best champion out there as he does so much consistent damage with his turrets, and against ranged champions, he still isn't bad as you can look to land rockets. The only lanes he can struggle to poke in are the counter poke matchups like Xerath and Vel'Koz, who just outrange you and will make you very miserable, and your only consistent long range ability is that W, as you oftentimes will want to hold your grenade for the next 2 categories. The first being peeling, where, once again, Heimerdinger is amazing. I used to play a lot of Heimerdinger mid when I first got the game, and I remember how much fun I had running around my turrets as people try to kill me only to have them to be the ones to perish as you focus on dodging as your turrets do all the work. But if you do also land your E for that stun slow, your turret beams will absolutely shred people. It can be quite difficult to land the grenade though, but even with that limitation, I will give Heimerdinger a S+ for peeling. People will try to gank you a lot because they will be frustrated that they are trapped under their tower thanks to Heimerdinger's ability to help his ADC to push. The fact that these 3v2s will oftentimes lead to you trading 1 for 1 or even better is amazing, and if your jungler is around to actually counter gank, you can buy so much time with your turrets to really win the play. I will say, the best place I have found to place your turrets if you are anticipating the enemy to make a play bot lane is in the forward bush in the corner, so it doesn't mess with your ADC's wave too much, and you can then run towards the alcove and buy time for your team while also dealing a ton of damage. All-inning as Heimerdinger is pretty much the same as peeling, as you can't really force the issue because, well, the enemies will almost always be hugging their turret. That being said, with enough harass, they will oftentimes be very low and could die with just a bit more poke. Your grenade into turret laser beams is some of the most bursts in the entire early game, but it does kind of require your enemy being in range to get chunked like that. For all-inning, I will give Heimerdinger a C. If the enemy is foolish enough to challenge one of your bushes with turrets in it, then his all-in is second to none. If the enemy instead is somehow dominating the lane and forcing you under tower, then his engage can actually struggle as he relies on having his turrets already set up to do a bunch of damage, and just looking to grenade someone isn't that powerful. But if you do get a gank and have, let's say, your ultimate grenade, it does get a lot better as the AoE CC potential on that ability is amazing. Now that we've talked about Heimerdinger's laning prowess, let's rate the matchups that you might have to face. The hardest matchups by far are Vel'Koz and Xerath, and I would say they're pretty much dodge-worthy. Not only do they beat you in lane, but they also ruin your strategy in the late game of sitting in bushes with your turrets as they just check them with their Q abilities. Other matchups that can be difficult but are still doable are the rest of the poke support matchups that have AoE to quickly clear out your turrets and to check bushes. They do have a bit shorter range though, so you can trade back with your W. The difference between the really hard categories and the rest of the matchups is massive, as enchanters don't really pose any threat to you and you can hit them with a lot of poke and maybe get turret plates from them as they are stuck under tower. They do however scale quite well, and enchanters are just stupid broken after the durability patch, sadly. Heimerdinger does really well into engaged champions, but Blitzcrank and Pike can be a bit interesting as they could maybe hook you and lead to you getting one shot, but if you're fast enough you can always place a turret in front of their hooks. Rakan is a fine matchup, but he has a lot of ability where your grenade will be hard to hit on him, and his AoE engage scales very well into the game. Champions that get absolutely dominated by Heimerdinger support are all the engagers who can't deal with his turrets, and if they ever go in on you, then you can just simply bring them towards your turrets, grenade them, and watch as their health bar melts away from all of the beams hitting them. Finally, we have a bunch of champions in the who plays these guys even, as I'm waiting to see people pick these characters in my games, but truthfully, you would dominate all of these matchups as the Donger. When it comes to what ADCs you want to pair Heimerdinger with, there's one champion that stands out from the rest, which is Ashe. Heimerdinger loves it when people are slowed near his turrets, as it allows them to get more hits in and lets him land his abilities more easily, which is exactly what Ashe provides. Later in the game, any champion that gets hit by an Ashe ult that doesn't have cleanse will be instantly dead, as you can follow it up with either your upgraded E for more CC, or even your normal E into upgraded rockets for an instant one-shot. The other combo we saw at Worlds that had some success was Heimerdinger, as both champions can kite from themselves quite well, and also poke down the enemies in lane. The final combo that I think could be decent is Misfortune Heimerdinger, as you should always be able to have push in the lane, and Misfortune's E slow is another great ability to set up Heimerdinger's kit. However, in the hypothetical case that your ADC is a useless bonobo, then you definitely might want to consider roaming from time to time, so let's talk about that. Roaming as Heimerdinger is not something you normally will do, as you want to really dominate your lane and try to get tower plates for your ADC from the pressure. But because I do love roaming so much, if someone is trolling their position, of course I gotta go for it. His roams are a bit awkward, as it usually involves you just running at people and trying to drop as many turrets in their face if they decide to try and fight with you, so that you can then grenade them to get that sweet beam damage. Roaming is also quite risky as Heimerdinger, as he's very vulnerable by himself due to his lack of dash, and his safety comes from being able to set up his turrets. I also ended up usually delaying my tier 2 boots, which doesn't help him either, and for these reasons I'll give him a B- for this category. You do benefit a ton from having very decent damage potential early on, which will catch people off guard, but a hard to land CC ability and no mobility to get places really hurts him here. Let's give Heimerdinger a rating for his ability to support in the early game, which will slot at a S-. If you are up against an engaged support, few champions will counter them harder than the Heimerdinger, but sadly, in a ton of my games, their popularity has really fallen off, and while he is still decent against other styles of supports, he isn't crazy strong, as he can be a bit punishable if the enemy plays well due to his squishiness and difficult to land CC, while also not being the most oppressive thing ever when it comes to lane poke. But I wonder, how might Heimerdinger fare when it comes to the...
I could do that better.
In the late game, responsibilities of a support I like to rate include their ability to get picks and to team fight. I think the scariest thing in League of Legends right now is Bushadinger, because the potential to do 50 to 100% of an enemy's health bar with some turrets in a bush and one landed grenade triggering all of his lasers to come in is just amazing. If you can clear out vision in an area that you know someone is going to have to try to walk through to get to an objective, then get ready to enjoy as your little support self puts the terror in their heart as they hear the grenade flying towards them. If you land the E, you can even follow up with your upgraded W, which if you hit every wave of it and have your turrets behind you, will one-shot everyone except the tankiest tanks. For getting picks, I will give Heimerdinger a S rating. He can single-handedly secure objectives for you if you get vision control, as the health lead you can get from his combo is ridiculous. But the other aspect of getting picks, which is catching someone out who is on the move, can be a bit more difficult for Heimerdinger, but it isn't impossible either, as you can look to slow them with your rocket, which will proc your Rylai's and enable you to get a grenade off, or perhaps even committing your upgraded grenade to get that nice and lengthy stun. Now let's talk about team fighting, where support's responsibilities include engaging, peeling, and sometimes dealing damage. Here's where I will mention Heimerdinger's upgraded E again, as that will be your best engage tool if that is what you need to do. Now the ability itself is not the easiest to land if you really want to stun everyone, but if you throw it out into chokes around the jungle or use it as a follow-up from other people's engage, then it can really be a devastating ability that single-handedly wins you a team fight if you can hit multiple carries with it. For engaging, I will give Heimerdinger an A+. His upgraded E is very solid, but he also has the option to engage by running at the enemies and placing down his turrets, which can start slowing them if you have Rylai's, and while there is some risk of you getting blown up, usually your team should have your back and finish off the person who is consistently being slowed. The best form of peel out there are the abilities which can't be missed, and while Heimerdinger's turrets are technically not point and click, the autos from them, which slow and deal a ton of damage to those running forward, is an amazing form of peel and a great way to counteract heavy engaged teams. With the slow, it makes landing your grenade so much easier, and by doing so, lets all of your turrets get maximum beam charge for maximum damage. Usually, while I'm looking to peel, I drop my upgraded turret because the consistent damage and disruption it can cause is second to none. But if the enemies are running in a choke towards you, his ulti E here is a great way to stop a play in its tracks. For peeling, I will give Heimerdinger Support a S-. There are few champions out there who mess up melees just as hard as Heimerdinger can, but against heavy range, he can really struggle as he doesn't have any of the healing or shielding against them. He can also struggle against really fed people, as his E is not the most reliable ability and can be rather slow to try and land on a very fast target. Dealing damage on Heimerdinger's support is very easy because as long as you have your turrets down, if someone walks into a bunch of them and gets hit by the beams, they will be getting massively chunked. I have a bunch of clips of me just devastating people's health bars, and for these reasons, he deserves an easy S+ tier here. Even with just 2 items, he really does chunk people, and more often than not, you will be the one who is topping the damage leaderboard in your games. While your turrets will be your usual damage source, that ultimate W can be a great way to KS people, which of course means kill share on this channel, because what ADC doesn't love sharing a kill with their support? Before we rate Heimerdinger's overall ability to support, let's take a look at the runes and items that I would recommend. In my opinion, there really is one choice, and that is Comet. The amount of damage you will be dishing out with this rune is just too powerful not to take it, plus you get so many other great runes like Manaflow Band and Scorch, which really help your potential to poke. Another rune people take on Heimerdinger that I never normally take was Absolute Focus, which makes a lot of sense because it empowers your ability to one-shot people when sitting in bushes, as you will be full health. Secondarily, the runes I like to take on Heimerdinger were either Magical Footwear for free boots or Perfect Timing, as Zhonya's is so powerful on Heime. I also really like to take Futures Market, as getting items on a Heimerdinger is really important, which we'll talk about now. For your gold income item, Spell Thieves is your only option, as you can proc it very easily with his rockets and turrets. Now normally I would recommend buying boots for most supports, but I'm a strong believer that Heimerdinger with Rylai's Scepter is so powerful you should rush it before getting boots, because you can get it pretty early on with Futures Market, and the slow it provides with your W and turret makes him very powerful. Then, after Rylai's, I do think you should go for boots, and Stork Shoes are your best option, as it'll empower your damage, and you don't really need a ton of CDR, as a lot of your gameplay is sitting around with your turrets. After these 2 items, you do have more options. The Mythic Leandries is amazing for Heimerdinger because once again, your turrets proc it so well. The enemy team has a ton of healing though, then an item like Morello's is a great purchase. Now let's say you get more gold or the enemies are non-stop diving you, well then buying Zhonya's is of course amazing for Heimerdinger, as baiting people into all of your turrets while you are invincible is a nice feeling. Now that we've talked about the runes and items, let's give Heimerdinger an overall rating for his ability to support, which will slot at a S+ rating. If a champion is getting picked or banned in 4 out of 5 Worlds Finals games, I think that it is a clear sign that he is quite strong. Even in today's pro play, the presence of Heimerdinger is clearly visible, and sadly I have waited so long to finish this video that they are nerfing him for the next patch. They are nerfing his turret health a bit as well as his rocket space damage, and while that is definitely a feels bad, I don't think it will be enough to prevent him from doing quite well in the support role. Would I recommend you play Heimerdinger support? Absolutely. This champion is bonkers as a potential secondary carry from the support role, and while there might be some games where you chain feed because of how immobile he is as well as squishy, you don't even technically need to be alive, as your turrets can still pump out damage in a fight after your demise. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would leave a like, that would be amazing, and if you would consider subscribing, that would make my day. We also have a Discord, link in the description, so feel free to check that one out if you want to chat. Again, thanks for watching, and I want to wish you good luck and have fun if you're playing Heimerdinger Support yourself. You might need it.